I never know when this thing is starting, but here I am. Um, I I really so I don't know if people have heard about sort of the news that's come out with the SEC and the LDS Church. I'm not really going to dig into that. My purpose isn't really to like hash that out. It's already being hashed out very well in other places, but I do think it presents a bit of a watershed moment. Um, which isn't actually new in the church. Historically, there's been lots of moments where people have had to like reorient themselves, resituate themselves. Um, just many, many options or opportunities for this. So I kind of compare it to, and this is what first came to my mind when I myself, because as I was trying to work through my own emotions and thoughts and ideas with this, um, I will reference this movie to so many people over so many for so many reasons, but Ponyo. I don't look it up if you've never heard of it. It's a Miyazaki, I want to say, film. He did Spirited Away and a couple other things, a bunch of other things actually. Our family likes him, but in this movie there is this, and I come to realize actually that it's a dynamic between masculine and feminine again, where you have the masculine figure who is trying to contain and order and structure this magic, these magical beings that he is in taking care of, that have these like huge divine potentials and the ability to be so much, but he's trying to help them and keep them safe and help them to grow, right? Like, just very, you can tell that he's really just trying to keep everything in order and in place and making sure it's all good. And one of the little girls gets away. Her name's Ponyo, and she ends up upsetting the whole balance of the world. And he's desperately trying to rein it in, and she's desperately trying to break free. And the oceans rise, and the moon's coming closer, and life's gonna be destroyed. Okay, so and there's a feminine figure that comes into this, and there's balance restored, and very Eastern philosophical ish. But I find it interesting because I'm like, oh yeah, this is what this feels like, right? All of a sudden, what we thought we knew is being thrown out of balance, and we have to like, and it feels that way. It feels like we're being drowned, and life's just so out of sorts. And this happens multiple times over our lives. Like I said, it's happened multiple times throughout church history. This isn't new. So I wanted to kind of talk about, well, just that idea, actually, this concept of finding balance. I don't want to call it that necessarily, but really that idea of being able to sit in these tensions. So I wanted to actually kind of just highlight a basic doctrine we have in the church, and this is, I love this doctrine. It's one of my favorites. What's a favorite? But I love this doctrine. This idea that we actually are here. We have been born here to earth to become like our heavenly parents. That's the big reason we're here. So, yay! And wouldn't it be lovely if it just was super nice and easy? But it's not. So here's where I'm kind of bringing in some of my own thoughts and ideas. So I'm not gonna say. So just keep that in mind. I'm giving you my thoughts on this. God. I mean, if you think to Genesis, God divided. The very first thing He did was He divided things, because in order for us to see clearly what is and what we want, we have to see it clearly, which means there's this and there's this, right? There's a couple things I think of. Well, we have dark and light, land and water. I mean, if you go back to the creation, right, there's this just story of the division of things. We have Adam and Eve. We have the tree of life versus the tree of knowledge. The very story of Genesis, of not Genesis, but of Adam and Eve, is the story of division. And it's not bad, especially in LDS theology. We absolutely don't look at the story of Adam and Eve as bad. We think it's a good thing. And, Eve made decisions that seemed opposite. Like there's just these two decisions to make, right? So we have one, the other, and they seemed opposite. They seemed like you can't have both. They exist. These two things exist within the same space. But we see this as a good thing within our theology. I love that. We see this as a good thing. So now we're here. So there's a basic reality of we have these opposites for us to look at. So some of them, outside of LDS theology or religious theology at all, you have things like giving and receiving, order and chaos. So those are we actually kind of have those within the church too. But some that are specific to the church, we have works and grace, right? Two things that, and this is something that people clash on all the time, two things that are good, but can you have them at the same time? How do you find balance between those two? Can we sit with this? We need works and we need grace. Justice, mercy, that's another big one. Too much justice isn't good. Too much mercy isn't good. But then how do you pull this together? Another one I think is a big one that I don't think people talk about, but I talk about it because I think it's incredibly meaningful, particularly within an LDS context, is the individual versus the collective. So lots of things to discuss with that one. I think with this particular thing that happened with the SEC, what we have here is order, and this is just the way I've thought of it. Order, structure, keeping people safe, versus flexibility. And the reason I say this is that to me it feels like the first presidency at the time was really trying to keep things safe and structured and ordered in a way that but really was against the law. At the end it came out that way. So there's that dynamic of what's better, what's worse in this, right? The other dynamic I see with this one in particular is we have valuable prophets and leaders. We know that. They've stated that. We know that. But they're called of God. Okay, so what we have with all of these polarities is tension that is then created. And we don't like tension. We don't like to feel that way. We want to have a particular answer to everything. And so in this tension, we create a fight or flight response. Or I think the other one that they use with us is fight or flight or freeze. We fight it, pick sides, defend to your death one side. We just flee from it. We don't want to deal with it, put it on the shelf. There's lots of ways that I think you could do this. But in either case, that's what we do. We go into the space of fight or flight. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a second. But I wanted to discuss a little bit more this idea of tensions and this polarities and the tension that comes with it. So believe it or not, this is totally being talked about in many various circles, including the Harvard Business Journal or Harvard Business Review. And I found a great article that talked about this concept of both and leadership. It's a great read if anybody wants to read it. It's in the May 2016 Harvard Business Review. So this is the quote that I found that really gets to the core of this concept of tension. So he says this, I think it was a girl who wrote it. She says this: hostility to contradictions is deeply rooted, especially in the Western world. So we don't like contradictions. A little bit different in the East, but Aristotelian logic treats contradictions and tensions as signals that we need to seek a more accurate, unified truth, right? I think we can be familiar with that. If one idea is quote unquote right, its opposite must be wrong. We kind of have that idea in our head. If that seems not to be the case, then we must redefine our idea to eliminate the contradiction. We want to get rid of the contradiction. We also struggle to make decisions and take actions that we see as inconsistent with an accepted truth, feeling a discomfort that psychologist Leon Festinger described as cognitive dissonance. When two ideas seem contradicting, choosing and championing just one can minimize cognitive dissonance. So I think we do this often. It's not surprising then that people often deal with paradoxical tensions by picking a side and consistently supporting it. So that's just a great description, I think, of how we feel about it. Um, it goes on to explain how that's not necessarily the case. I don't know if I want to go into the idea that actually we need to, well, I will. We need to learn to hold tensions, that if we try and pick one polarity, we're completely knocking out the other polarity as false, wrong, bad. And that's just, in my experience, hasn't been true. I think, again, you can look at justice and mercy as a great example of this. If you pick justice as the correct way to be all the time in every situation, I think you can see that then you start asking, well, where's the place for mercy? So it's not one or the other, it's and both. And I think it's about us trying to find the balance between those things, trying to navigate that space that gets to be tricky. But it's really the navigation of these tensions that spurs growth. My thoughts are that it does that because we can clearly see the opposites, and we have to try and figure out for ourselves how we want to navigate this space of opposition. And it requires a lot of work and a lot of internal kind of looking at ourselves. One thing that I also love about just Christians, I think this is a Christian concept, that Christ not only walked this path before we were here, right? He walked this earth, he experienced earth life, but he's walking it with us as well right now. So we're not alone in this. So you may feel really uncomfortable and feel awful and yucky, but Christ is walking that with you. So I want to talk about a couple ways to work through this tension. I don't want to give answers. Sorry, I wish I could. I have answers for myself, and actually I'm still working with anytime I come up against these tensions, I definitely have to take some time to work through stuff. So I'm still doing that. But what I would like to do is kind of give some tools, and I hate to tell you, but the ones I come up with are the Sunday school answers. But I actually, over this course of this month, I kind of would like to present 3 things. If I get to them, I really hope I do. I want to talk about prayer and repentance and community. Those 3 things and how we work through tension with these things. But I'm hoping to give you guys a different view on it, a different way that these things actually help us work through these tensions. So stick with me if you feel like you are sick and tired of those Sunday school answers. I am hoping to give you a different view of them that can help you with this. And so for right now, the only thing I kind of want to put out there as when you're feeling tensions, when you're feeling this pull between what seems to be apparently opposite sides, to just go ahead, recognize that feeling. Take a deep breath and know that this is normal. That actually nothing's wrong with you when you are feeling this, that it's normal. And now your work is to move forward and grow and develop and use Christ as your guide in this. So it's by design that we experience this tension between opposites. It's by design that we grow through this tension. And hopefully what I really hope to give you guys is an idea of it. You're okay. This tension's okay, and that your life won't fall apart. And everybody may come up with different ideas of how to work through this tension or what they need at this time, because we're all different. But I'm hoping to kind of just give you some tools to work through it. So.